Another day, or I should say another nighttime, another readathon. Welcome to the sounds of my nighttime, the furnace and nugget eating food. The furnace turned off. It knew I was talking about it. I am excited for another readathon. So I did my first readathon in, I distinctly remember, July 2022 because I had just gotten over having COVID for the first time. And I needed something to look forward to because I was miserable. And I had seen booktubers do readathons and it just looked so fun and I wanted to try it. And sure enough, I love readathons and that's why we're here today. I am a very seasonal mood reader, so my rhythm for readathons now is I enjoy doing one per season. So welcome to my spring readathon. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to actually take people along with me for one because I've done quite a few now. I don't know exactly how many, but I'm sure I've done around 10, somewhere around 10 now, over a few years. Oh my gosh, 2022 was already 3 years ago. Anyway, yeah, I think I've done around 10 now probably. And I've had an array of experiences. There was one, I think it might have also been in 2022, that I remember doing because it was the worst one in terms of I forced myself to do one on a Friday after a very long week of work and it was exhausting and that was a horrible idea. And so I've kind of trialed and errored what works for me and what doesn't. My favorite thing to do with readathons, I think everyone's a little different, but I like to organize my books in my TBR by page number and then take a bunch of shorter books because it makes me feel good to know I'm making progress in my TBR. But also I think having a bunch of shorter books keeps readathons fun for me rather than I don't know, I've heard some people start to feel like readathons are a chore or not fun, and I want readathons to always remain fun for me, with the exception of that one exhausted time. And so I like to do more seasonal picks, and generally, not always, but I like to try to have generally shorter things to read from. So this will be my second readathon of the year. I did my winter readathon on my birthday in January, and so I got to kind of compile a bunch of my favorite authors and read some of their works I hadn't read before, so that was a lot of fun because I wanted it to be my favorite things in honor of my birthday, but also winter is my favorite season. And Emma from Emmy Reads loves winter and really helped me embrace my love of winter because people are so vocal about their hatred of winter. So it's even intimidating to admit that I love winter, but I do. And Emma's given me the strength to admit that. So here's what's going on this time. I'm feeling apprehensive about this readathon, not because I'm not very excited to do one, but because I don't really know what I'm gonna think about almost any of my choices. I also have no idea what I want to pick up in what order. I technically started already because I was putting my laundry away and I started listening to Revelation in the Bible. I haven't listened to it in a while. I think I've only actually listened to bits and pieces / read bits and pieces. I've never read the whole thing. And my friend and I were talking about Revelation the other day. And so I was like, what do I want to listen to? Let's do that. If you don't know, if anyone's interested, there is an artist on Spotify called Streetlights, and they read scripture to rhythm. And as someone who loves music, I love that. It's not just audio, but it's kind of a little bit rhythmic too. And that just really works with my brain. So I've also realized it's a great way to absorb scripture when I'm in a more exhausted mental health, depressed, anxious headspace. And I know that I need scripture, but I don't have the normal energy I have to physically read it. a lot of times too, when I physically read scripture, I put pressure on myself to like really analyze it. And so that's also something I just need to work on myself with expectations and perfectionism, but also listening is a good reminder that I can just listen, I can just absorb it, and I don't have to always be analyzing it for it to be impactful, right? So that's what I started with. And yeah, I'm just gonna go through my options here. I have a big variety. Did I already say this? None of them are the same genre, so I have a good variety of genres here, but I also generally tried to pick these around what feels like spring vibes to me. So one that I mentioned already in my May TBR that I'm continuing to read through multiple months is O. Henry, 101 Short Stories. And I think I'm actually gonna read you one to start off with because I looked and the next two are both less than a page. And the way I enjoy reading short stories is only reading one at a time to just really let the story simmer for what it is rather than just blasting through a ton of them. And in a way, I feel like, maybe partially because I've written short stories before, I feel like that's how they should be read instead of reading it like a novel. Letting each one sit for a moment or a day or what have you. So I'm just gonna read one for tonight. Something for Baby it's called. And I'll give you a taste of O. Henry because he is so diverse. You don't know what's gonna come out of his mouth. You don't know what he's gonna talk about. Something I've found so far in the like handful, close to a dozen I've read so far, is he tends to put, to various degrees, some sort of twist in each story, and that makes it very interesting. It makes it both a fun and curious experience to know, like, what's gonna happen? What's he gonna do this time? And they're always very, like, vivid, distinct stories, which is very fun too. So I'll definitely start by reading one of these to you guys, but let's also go through the other options. I randomly picked from my physical TBR jar, which is also an idea I got from Emmy Reed's, my booktube inspiration queen. So she made a jar and wrote down every single book on her physical TBR and then is like randomly pulling them out. So I did the same thing, and so I wanted to pick one out from my physical TBR for this readathon. And so this is really the only like full-length novel I have in this readathon, and that is After Dark by Haruki Murakami. I've not read a single Murakami. This one I did get from Emma's recommendation. This one's been on my list for a while. It was like right after I started watching her videos consistently, and it just sounded very intriguing to me conceptually because it takes place over the span of an entire night. So it starts at 11:56 p.m. and it ends at 6:52 a.m. So I tend to pick books on my to read list based on concepts, and so that's very much why I picked this one. I will say, having since heard a lot more about him on booktube, I'm a little scared just because I've heard very diverse thoughts on his writing, and part of that is I've heard he can be very sexist, and I know the protagonist in here is a female, young adult specifically. She's 19, so that makes me a little worried, but I've also heard he's fantastic too, so I don't know. I would like to make up my own opinion, but I'm honestly nervous. And I'm also nervous because my dear friend Chris bought me this for my birthday last year and I really want to love it because he spent his money on it. So I hope I love it. we'll see together. I think I'm definitely gonna read this last thing before bed tonight because it's the vibe. But that's all. Then we have very spring and also very small, which is why I picked it. The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I have read one Ernest Hemingway, To Have and Have Not, with a previous book club I was in, and we all hated it. So I'm really nervous to reread Hemingway. But I, like real life, like anything, I like to give people more than one chance. So that's what I'm doing. And this one has not been on my TBR. The one by him I have wanted to read as a second chance for him has been The Sun Also Rises, because it takes place in Spain and that interests me. But my dad loves this and I love my dad, so I feel like I need to read something that my dad loves, just because I feel like it'll help me understand my dad better. So, and it's very springy, water, you know. And then I was gonna have a Mary Oliver poetry collection because she is so nature heavy in her poetry, and poetry is like the genre I want to read in spring and summer. But I forgot because it's a holiday weekend, the library was not open today, so I could not go grab that, unfortunately. But I do have my huge treasury of favorite poems. They're all classical poets. I've not touched this at all yet, but I do have unread poetry if I would like some poetry, which I think I would like. So this collection goes from the earliest poets to the most recent. It starts with the likes of Christopher Marlowe and someone you might know, William Shakespeare. I've actually not read any of his sonnets, so that'll be cool. And then, yeah, it goes through a ton of poets over a very large period of time, and it ends with the likes of Joyce Kilmer and T.S. Eliot. So I'll probably read some Shakespeare. Honestly, this might be the first thing I pick up. I think I'm feeling poetry. So, and then I don't have the physical copies because, again, the library issue, but I did find ebooks for the two other books I was going to grab from the library. The first one is You Gone Ho, which is a Calvin and Hobbes collection. I love Calvin and Hobbes. I grew up with Calvin and Hobbes, and the beauty of the internet and the beauty of being an adult is I was able to find all of the Calvin and Hobbes collections I have never read before. So I'm definitely going to be reading that one as well, either tonight or tomorrow. So if I'm feeling about the other authors, I can have like an author I trust. He's really the only author I trust out of this bunch. And then the last one I have, I forget the full title, but it's a collection of Celtic tales. I am Irish, of Irish descent. I'm very proud to be Irish, and I have an affinity for all things Irish and Ireland. And it's not just Irish stories, there's also like Norse tales and things in that region. But being Irish, that's the main reason I added that to my collection, and it feels very springy to me. A lot of these things feel very like nature oriented, and so I'm excited to have a good variety and excited to bring you along on a journey where I have no idea what I'm going to think of any of these. I think it'll make for interesting check-ins with you guys as I'm doing this. So hopefully you don't watch me like hate all of these. That would not be fun for any of us. Okay, so I'm gonna read you Two Wise by O. Henry because I read the first story and I didn't get it. Which could be like an old-timey thing, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not smart. But this one is funny and like a classic O. Henry story because it's similar to a story I just read. So this is called Two Wise. There is a man in Houston who keeps quite abreast of the times. He reads the papers, has traveled extensively and is an excellent judge of human nature. He has a natural gift for detecting humbugs and fakers, and it would be a smooth artist indeed who could impose upon him in any way. Last night, as he was going home, a shady-looking man with his hat pulled over his eyes stepped out from a doorway and said, "Say, gent, here's a fine diamond ring I found in the gutter. I don't want to get into no trouble with it. Give me $1 and take it." The Houston man smiled as he looked at the flashy ring the man held toward him. "A very good game, my man," he said, "but the police are hot after you fellows. You had better select your rhinestone customers with better judgment. Good night." When the man got home, he found his wife in tears. "Oh, John," she said, "I went shopping this afternoon and lost my solitaire diamond ring. Oh, what shall I—" John turned without a word and rushed back down the street, but the shady-looking man was not to be found. His wife often wonders why he never scolded her for losing the ring. So there you go. That's O. Henry for you. He has some very cute sentimental stories as well. His most popular one is probably The Gift of the Magi, but then I've mentioned this before, my favorite one that my dad recommended was The Last Leaf. It's about the power of friendship, and it's so well done. I would highly recommend reading that story. Nugget is trying to get inside my tripod bag. And yeah, I'm gonna go pick my first full read. With Nugget. Secondly, I think I'm done with my poetry for the readathon. It was fun. So basically, a big reason that I got this treasury, couple things. First of all, I haven't read nearly as much classical poetry compared to modern poetry, so this is a great way to survey a ton of classical poetry, and similar to that, to hopefully have a springboard of way to find poets I want to read more of, more in depth. So I think I already mentioned this. It starts with 17th century poets and goes through four centuries. So what, that would be through the 20th century. Yeah, so no 21st, but that's okay. I've read a decent amount of 21st century poets. Yeah, okay, so who did I read? I read Christopher Marlowe, Shakespeare, John Donne, Ben Jonson, Robert Herrick, I think. Yeah, Robert Herrick, Andrew Marvell, and John Milton. I know John Milton's super popular, but honestly, he's always just so verbose, specifically references so many things that, like, I think timeline-wise I'm not familiar with. It's kind of like how I feel with Gilmore Girls. There's so many references of things that I just don't know, but frankly don't care enough to research. So then, you know, it's like you can kind of only connect to it so far. And obviously that's very subjective, but I'm kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I've never really been overtly struck by his writing, even though that might be a hot take. Not that it's bad by any means, it just topically never engrosses me enough to like want to go deeper, and I feel like his poetry requires going deeper, it requires extra research. But that's also like, I'm only gonna put that much energy into something if I like really care about it. So if I don't, that just feels like a lot of extra work that, like, it feels like homework at that point, which is not what I want out of poetry. A lot of the reason that I read poetry is, I mean, kind of also why I write it is I love rhythm. And so that's what I really like about the 17th century poets, is they're all very rhythmic. I think, you know, there's a lot of iambic pentameter, but I really resonate with just wanting everything to be around rhythm. I think that's just what I gravitate towards as someone who loves music. The vine, I do that. Yeah, exactly. So I just had one thing. My favorite was easily John Donne. I think realistically he would be the one of this handful of poets that I would read more of. The poem that I liked was called Death, and I liked the last line because it's like, oh, that's a cool point. And death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Never thought of it like that. Death is death's beginning and end. Scary, this like thing that looms over us, and yet it's like the briefest thing ever. Like, it has like no story. It's just like, beh, you know, it's just like one little note on the piano, and then that's all she wrote. Literally, metaphorically. My enjoyment of poetry is maybe not what a lot of other people's are, and part of that, honestly, for me, is kind of the why can I not speak right now? Because I'm tired. The sociological aspect, where there's the group of poets and the group of people who enjoy poetry that comes off stereotypically snooty and classist, and that type of attitude around anything irritates me. And so I prefer generally things that can be easily accessible to anyone, because I don't think things that are lofty are the equivalent to better. I personally find it more impactful to read something blunt. Sometimes you need bluntness, and sometimes with more layered, literary device heavy poetry, sometimes it comes off like, I kind of don't think you even know what you're saying. You're just trying to write something so flowery that it now is like not entirely making sense, and you're like, well, that's good because it can be whatever you want it to be. And I'm like, that kind of just sounds like a cop-out to not knowing what you actually want to say with it. Sometimes I'm like observing people and I'm like, can you just say what you mean? And I think it's just me, like, cut the crap, people. Don't act like you're better than anyone else. We all poop, you know? So at this point, I'm getting very tired, so I'm gonna start reading After Dark. Maybe it'll even be a cool experience with my head in and out of consciousness. maybe that'll make it a cool experience. I'm interested to see what tone of the book this will be, if it's gonna be like super quirky, weird, or I literally have no idea what to expect, which makes me scared and excited. So yeah, that's gonna be what I attempt to read before bed, basically until I feel like my eyes cannot stay open any longer. Here's the deal, I had a bit of a wrench in my plans and it is now mid-afternoon. I had sleep deprivation and a lot of anxiety last night, so I was up most of the night, which definitely had a missed opportunity to just sit and read way more of After Dark, because that would have been perfect ambiance, but I didn't because my brain was not rationalizing appropriately. I'm doing much better, but yeah, have not really read much today. I did listen to more Revelation. I did do a little bit of mental health reading, and now here we are. So I did read last night 38 pages of After Dark, and I'm really intrigued. I'm not hating it. He writes a lot like a movie camera, so it's very quick and easy to read. I'm very curious what's gonna happen. I'm only a couple chapters in, so not much has happened yet, but I'm wondering if like there's gonna be like magical realism or something. Like I don't know, I'm just getting the vibe it might not be only contemporary, but I could be totally wrong. Either way, I'm excited to keep reading. It's less than 300 pages, so even though I've only read 38, like, I know I could easily read a ton more. But given the amount of inner turmoil I went through, I think I'm gonna take an aside and read some Calvin and Hobbes now for some giggles. I think that would be a treat for myself that I should do. So that's what I'm gonna do. Playing cartoon goes, the temptation to misuse these things is awful. I love summer vacation. I can feel my brain beginning to atrophy already. Some of his expressions, I'm like, I think this is where I get my oddly specific sense of humor. He goes, if something doesn't happen here soon, I'm gonna whack out. Who says that? Good evening again. I will probably read a little more tomorrow because my readathon did not quite pan out how I expected it to, but that's okay. I took a nap today, which I very much needed, and so basically my updates are I finished listening to Revelation, which actually made me emotional near the end, just to witness is obviously not the right word, but to hear the end of time and everything is wild. I feel like I could dig in very deeply into the book because there's so many symbols and metaphors. I also finished reading Yukon Ho, the Calvin and Hobbes collection. Turns out I read most of it before, so it was still enjoyable. 4 stars. My favorite comic was definitely the atrophy line. I did make progress out in the beautiful weather with After Dark, and I'm currently on page 82, and I'm very, very curious what is happening. I don't really want to say much, it's just very curious. Like, I'm wondering if it's going to turn into genre bending, which I think I said before. I don't know what's happening, but it's just like piquing so much intrigue. 1 week later. Welcome back. I'm gonna give my final wrap up from this past weekend because I got to read a little more and I didn't read as much as I wanted to last weekend, so I figured let's just combine them, okay? Because when I said yesterday, no reading happened yesterday. So here we are. So 2 books I finished and 2 new books that I have in my possession. So first I'll start with the 2 books I finished. So the first one I did finish After Dark by Haruki Murakami this weekend. This is my one and only Murakami on my list. I gave it a solid 3 stars. The best way I can describe it is very apathetic. The concept was very interesting to me. So this follows a girl named Mari and her sister Ari. So it's the entire nighttime period, which is why it's called After Dark. I thought that concept was very interesting. Execution-wise, it was a very easy read. It read like a movie. I'm curious though if the translation was ideal because I don't know, there were just parts where I didn't fully understand why certain details were included. It was generally very simple, but then near the end, it suddenly got very poetic, which was simultaneously cool, but very out of place with the rest of the book because it was 90% of the way through, and I really felt like not much was happening. I was over halfway yesterday with this much left, and I was like, you'd think after 140 pages you'd really feel like things were happening, and I really didn't. And I understand it's supposed to be more of a quieter book, but it didn't even feel very meditative to me, and I think that's because most of the writing was very simple, besides a little bit near the end. I liked how it kind of meditated on the concept of reading within the book, like a fourth wall break. But I don't know, it kind of felt like a lot of it was almost did something and then in my opinion didn't do enough. So, and then the ending confused me. It might have just been an ambiguous ending where you're supposed to imply a lot of things, but to me it just felt like a ton of things are unresolved. So not the kind of ending that I think I was hoping for. So I didn't dislike it by any means, but it really didn't do anything for me, and I'm just kind of moving on. To me, anything that gives me the sensation of dislike is below 3 stars. Anything that is a sensation of appreciation is above 3 stars, and then 3 stars to me is neutrality and apathy, which honestly in some ways is kind of the worst for me, because I would rather it makes me feel strongly negatively than it makes me feel like nothing. Even though I just read 245 pages, it made me feel nothing. That bothers me. So I'm curious if I would enjoy it more if I could read it in the original writing, but I think all things considered, I don't think Murakami is for me with everything I've heard about his other books. I know he's very beloved to a lot of people, but and I'm very grateful that I can say I've read him, because oftentimes I want to say I've at least read one of most writers so that I can be in the know, but he doesn't intrigue me enough to read more, gonna be honest. So there we go. And then the other one I just read today was 1,000 Mornings by Mary Oliver. This was going to be part of the readathon and then was not. This one I enjoyed, but kind of similarly, I gave it 3 stars because it was enjoyable in the moment, but I don't think it's something that's gonna stay with me at all. And not just because I read it in one sitting, but I don't know. It's nice poeticism, nice nature meditations, but I think similarly this feeling of like I wanted more and I didn't get it. So I didn't like this collection as much as the other one I read. I forget what it was, but this one was not as memorable for me. But I did like a few of the poems. I liked the meditations on the dog, and I liked the man who has many answers. I think that was probably my favorite one. And then I liked On Traveling to Beautiful Places, because anything with God is something that immediately sticks out to me, honestly, in poetry. So that was that. And then I also got 2 new books this weekend for my collection. One of them I purchased, one of them was a gift by my friend. I had a very lovely, to me, kickoff to summer because it's June now. And it was super cozy and full of reading. So what more could you want, right? These are very different, but I'm excited for both of them. The one I purchased is Pure Nessie by Susanna Clarke. I actually last year tried to read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and I did not care for it. I DNF'd it. But something about this, I just feel like I'm gonna love it. Anyone who's said they've loved it is someone I really trust in terms of reading taste, so I just have a feeling, even though I didn't like her other one, mostly because it was way more long-winded than I cared for, this one's a lot more approachable, digestible, and so I don't know. I'm very particular about purchasing books, but certain books like this, I just get a vibe that I'm gonna enjoy it, and I can't explain what it is. Maybe, Lord willing, it's the Holy Spirit giving me something fun to meditate on. And honestly, I'm hoping to read it this month because it's intrigued me for a very long time now. And then the final book that was given to a gift by my dear friend is Ireland, A Celebration in Verse, which I did not plan this, but I'm very grateful for this. This is an old Barnes & Noble copy, and there's 2 things I love. It's Ireland and verse. So I'm very excited to read this, especially now that it's the summer months when I love to read poetry the most, and still trying to get more deeply into Irish literature. So I really appreciated how thoughtful this gift was, and all of the things it will pay homage to in here. I'm very excited to read this. I'm sure I will also read it in the summer sometime. Short and sweet here. That's basically all I have. I hope you enjoyed partial cozy vibes, partial reading vibes, and then just a conglomeration of all my various reading thoughts from the past week. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate getting to talk about the things that I don't normally get to talk to anyone about. I actually have somewhere to put my thoughts now. And if you've read either of my new editions, I would love to know and what your thoughts were. And yeah, feel free to mention anything that you've read lately, if you've ever done a readathon, what you think of readathons. I'm excited to plan a summer one. It'll probably be later summer, probably August time. But yes, if you would like to join me, also let me know, and I would love to tell you when I end up planning that one. Nugget is here. And with that, we will bid you adieu.